Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And I'm your host, Barry Ramey. This is an episode of WeTheJ6ers.com, and we are highlighting and continuing to highlight the men and women of January 6th that have been silenced for so long now and are finally able to tell their side of the story. For several years now, America has sat and watched the narrative spun by mainstream media about who these people are, labeling them domestic terrorists, insurrectionists, and so on and so forth. And as we are being released, we're challenging America to take a look for themselves at who we are, what was going through our mind that day, and what happened to us while in prison. And it isn't to create a victimhood story or any type or capitulate to any victimhood mentality. We are trying to prevent this corruption and weaponization of the Department of Justice against political opponents on either side of the political spectrum from ever happening again. Today we have Robert Norwood. Robert is an individual that I got to know personally, and while incarcerated both at Northern Neck Regional Jail in Virginia and Lewisburg Penitentiary in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. I will bring Robert up now. Robert, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. It's good to see you. How are you?
You as well. You as well. And you're South Carolina, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And you born and raised?
Yes, sir. Born and raised, Spartanburg, South Carolina.
A lot of people don't know about you. You were a choir singer. You have some pipes on you.
Yeah, I sang in my church choir. I sang in a gospel quartet. We traveled the country and sang full time. Did that for a little while. I did that regionally and nationally, and then ended up at the Capitol. So
Yeah. Well, the how I know that you could sing isn't because you told me. It was because when I was arrested and traveling to my final destination and being put through diesel therapy, I ended up at USP Atlanta, and I took your place in your cell right after you left. And
yeah.
People thought that I was you for a little while because all they heard was the J6er, and they had gotten used to you. And like so many of us, you got packed up and moved in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And your our old cellmate, Dupree.
Yes.
Dupree told me that you could sing and you were a J6er from South Carolina. And then finally, I was trailing behind you and got to catch up to you at Northern Neck, where we finally met in person. And at that point, you had been in Northern Neck for some time.
Yeah, I think I did like 8 months there or something, close to it, right at it.
Yeah,
So,
it's funny. Did you ever make it to the DC Gulag?
yeah, that's where I ended up. I was there from I think mid March to late April of 2021.
Oh, so you were in the beginning when it was rough then, because it did clean up a bit after Congress got involved and put their foot on their neck. No pun intended.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, but at towards the end there, the guys were coming from DC to Northern Neck, and they were trying to get back to DC because Northern Neck was so bad.
Yeah, Northern Neck was bad, but DC was worse at my experience. But
yeah. Well, back then I think it was when it originally people started when J6er started going to DC jail. I don't think there was a worse spot in the country for us or anyone for that matter.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start here. As you know, as we were talking previously, and WeTheJ6ers.com, what we aim to do is we're trying to get people's story out there in their own words and allow the American public to judge for themselves who these people are. If you're anything like me, Robert, the first time I had a broken heart in my life was when the Department of Justice looked me in my eyes at my pre-release trial and told me I was a domestic terrorist. That hurt. I'm a lot of things. A sinner. I'm not perfect, but domestic terrorist is something I'm not, because even when it comes to the far Marxist left, I wish them no ill will or harm. And I think you would at least need that to qualify for a domestic terrorist. And I haven't met any man or woman that was a January 6th or that I can honestly say had any ill will in their heart. Acted like a jackass that day. Sure. But do I wish any ill will against my country or its government? Nothing could be further from the truth. So what Robert Norwood, what what was going through your mind leading up to January 6th that inspired you to say, I'm going to show up? And what was the reason Robert Norwood showed up that day?
Well, honestly, I just started a new job, and I did not have the time to go. But my wife at the time was begging me to take her, and I was like, you know what, I I really should go because my country at this point needs me because I was certain the election had been stolen, and there's just zero doubt in my mind that it was. I mean, there's proof has come out since then that just vindicates all of us for thinking that. But um, I ended up originally going because I wanted to make sure she would be okay. I was afraid if she went by herself that something bad could happen to her. I knew that in past protests that Trump supporters were being attacked by Antifa or whoever they might be, counter protesters. And they were targeting typically women and or older people. So I didn't want her to be there alone. So I just went to make sure she was protected. And then one thing led to another, and we ended up at the Capitol. We were at the rally at the Ellipse at first, and then we just walked with the crowd, went to the Capitol, and we sat and got some food from one of the food trucks. And while eating, I heard this loud explosion come from the Capitol. And at that point, I didn't realize it was the police just attacking the innocent, peaceful crowd. I thought it was the Antifa or counter protesters doing what I've seen them do on live protests before, or riots where they're throwing those fireworks at people and then making them explode. I guess you call them mortar shells, but they would chunk mortar shells at people or police they didn't like. I thought that's who that was.
The concussion grenades.
Well, yeah, I mean the Antifa, I think they just use fireworks because that's what they were. Yeah. So I thought that's what it was, but it was a concussion grenade, and I found out later how much those hurt when they go off near you. But at that point I was like, we got to go because that's where Antifa's at. That's the kind of protesters, and they're throwing fireworks at Trump supporters. I want to go see this, So that's originally why I took off toward the noise and commotion. And so when we got to, I guess where originally there was a fence, I knew nothing of a fence. There was no sign of a barrier. When I got to the steps, I had probably 2, maybe 3 explosions had gone off by the time, or right as I got there, or before I got there.
Just to be clear, that was after this alleged initial breach when you walked up. People had already been around, had already walked up to the Capitol by the time you got there, correct?
Not in the building, not yet.
But they were on the grounds.
Of course, yeah.
So there at this point, by the time you got there was no barrier. There was nobody standing there. It was just wide open. You just walked up.
Yeah, it was a big crowd. I mean, there's probably several thousand or more that had gotten there already. The speech had just ended, or was just ending, or still going on, but at the Ellipse. But I got there before the crowd reached the back barrier. So the crowd was still kind of small. I walked over that barrier, or over where the barrier was, those black steps they had. Walked over that, walked into the crowd, and just made my way up to the front, not realizing what was going on. I didn't know they had a little police line up there. I just thought it was people fighting counter protesters at that point.
Right.
So on my way to the front of the crowd, I ran into people I knew from Spartanburg. I didn't know they were there, but I won't mention them because they never got in trouble. But I will. Said hey to them, discussed just what was going on, and this gentleman was with some other guy who had, I guess, a grenade had gone off beside his head. It burnt his hair. His face was burnt, like not terribly skin burnt, but his hair was burnt pretty badly, and he's black, like it had blown up near his face. And so he was getting him out of there. And so that really made me mad because all he did was point and said, boom, and took him away. So I didn't know what that meant. When I got closer, I saw the police up there just shooting at people, with little bean bags, whatever they're shooting, rubber bullets, and throwing grenades. And I was like, what are you guys doing? And I was yelling at the cops, like, what are y'all doing? Why are y'all doing this? Because at that point, I didn't see anybody fighting to the cops. They were just, everybody's screaming at them saying, stop, And then scuffle started breaking out to my right. I'm 100% convinced from information I've received since that these people were paid antagonists, provocateurs. They were over there starting fights with the cops. So I just watched it all take place. And then out of nowhere, some guy comes up to me and hits me in the back fairly hard with a fire extinguisher. Shoves it in my back. I jumped, I turned around, and he shoves it in my stomach. Says, "Take this, take this." So he left me no choice. So I just held on to it. And I looked at him like, "What do I do with this?" And he goes, I turned around because I was going to put it down or give it to somebody else because I didn't want it. And he leans over and whispers in my ear, "Use it as a weapon. Use it as a weapon." I was like, "No." So I didn't know who that was. Never saw that guy again.
Yeah. I mean, anybody encouraging you to use something that they themselves could have used probably has a nefarious agenda for you and not them.
Oh, definitely. This guy wanted someone to get in trouble. He wanted the violence to take place. And
were you ever able to find any pictures or photos of this individual?
Oh, yeah, it's in my discovery. You can see his profile where they got me holding the fire extinguisher, and that's what they of course they have that snapshot of me holding the fire extinguisher.
Sure.
Not the video of how I got it or what happened.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But that guy,
if you didn't mind, I'd like to see later on. Email me a photo of that because we're starting to collect some photos and see if we're working with somebody, a private investigator who has a long history in the intelligence community to figure those things out. So I'd like to take a look if you don't mind sharing.
Not at all. I'll send that to you. But he's got his hand on my shoulder in this particular picture where he's just like, in the process of telling me what to do with that. But I ended up passing it to the guy in front of me. It was just like, I don't want that. And then I find out later that someone used the fire extinguisher, what I heard, to beat the cop in the head. And I was like, I panicked at that point. I was like, oh,
yeah.
Man. I thought, my prints are on it. I'm going to be in trouble. But fortunately, they didn't try to link me to that. So
Matthew Miller, a young man, they did try to link him to that, and fortunately that video where he was nowhere around and that had surfaced, but they originally tried to link Matthew Miller to that.
Yeah, I know Matt. I met him in the same pod we met.
Good kid. Good
dude. Yeah, he is. But he and after that, I'm not sure how many more minutes went by. I know a concussion grenade or two went off right near me, so close it burnt my face. I think it had maybe a pepper ball or something that hit concrete next to me and burned me on my right side really bad. I mean, I had to knock my glasses off and hit the ground. So I found my glasses. I was burning very bad. I couldn't open my eye. People were helping me, trying to pour stuff on me. And that just really upset me at that point because I hadn't done anything. It just stood there. Other than yell and act like an idiot, but didn't do anything illegal. Didn't know I did. And then the crowd opened up a doorway at the bottom of the scaffolding, and they cut a doorway. I don't know what they did. The thing opened up, and people started running up the steps. And I'm probably 20 feet back, and the crowd's just surging toward that direction. That's when everybody made their way up steps, and the cops are at that point. They're shooting everybody going under there with the pepper balls, and you're hitting concrete with pepper balls, and just it's gassy in there. When you walked in there, it'll burn you. And I ended up going up the steps. There wasn't no way to go backward at this point because the crowd had tripled in size.
I was there. I was right by you.
It was a huge crowd. I turned around and you just couldn't see the end of people. So I said, well, I'm not walking back to that crowd. So I figured the best route would be to go through the building and out the other side. I said, that'd be the easiest way to get out of here because I don't know whether, there's no way I'm going that way. So I went in, and then the crowd just went one way. So I followed the crowd and just wandered around. And then one guy started shouting, "This way, this way." I had no idea where I was going. So I was like, all right. So I walked that way, and he led me straight to Nancy's office. I mean, how that guy knew that. But that was pretty sure he was one of the people his intention was to get people to do certain things in the building.
Right.
Got to the speaker's lobby, and there was blood on the ground in one area. I'm guessing that was where Ashley was shot. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't.
Well, yeah, I started at a certain point. I started seeing bloody footprints coming out, on the top, and I'm assuming that's where it was from.
I know there was blood in other places. I'm not sure who it was from, but I ended up going out. I went out a door, and I thought that was an exit. I didn't know it wasn't, but I saw outside through windows. So I went out the door, and I was on a balcony. It was the speaker's balcony. Didn't realize that existed, but I had nowhere to go. But that was directly over where the police were, where I just was, and looked at the crowd from a height advantage, and it was massive. And I have, oh man,
all the way back to the Washington Monument, shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, you couldn't see the end of it, and it wasn't
No.
just that road. It was also down Constitution in
Right.
Pennsylvania. Both, I mean, just as far as you could see. So typically during a presidential inauguration, they got one area that's blocked off, and they say that's about 1 million people. If that's the case, then there was 2 million people lined up to the Capitol that day. I mean, at least it was a lot of people. I've never
Yeah.
seen that many people in my life, and
Yeah.
I got some brief video of it. I can send you later, but it was a pretty cool uh, vantage point. And so at that point, there was a couple people that walked out there with me. I don't know who they were, but I turned to them and said, "Hey, we need to get out of here because we're going to get stuck in here and they're going to take us all to jail or whatever." So we walked back in, and I walked around the corner, and
That sounds like some insurrectionists if I've ever heard, worrying about leaving the perimeter before you go to jail for trespassing.
yeah, I
That's
didn't.
yeah.
I wasn't in the insurrection mood that day. I didn't want to take over the country, but
Yeah.
I rounded a corner and I saw people running through a door. I was like, maybe that's the way to go. And I turned the corner, and it was an office. So I was like, I asked myself out loud because I'm narrating the video. I said, "Whose office is this?" And I looked up and I saw Nancy Pelosi's name. I said, "This is Nancy's office." So I wandered in just to look around, and there was her desk was there, her laptop or computer, whatever was on, opened up to her emails, purse on her desk. I was like, uh, you know, I was in there like 27 seconds. I looked around the corner. There's another room, like a little conference room attached to it. There were people in there like opening their fridge, drinking beers. I was like, oh, wow. I said, this is getting a little crazy. And so some guy, some man, I think I'm fairly certain he was wearing a Georgia hoodie. I don't know. From what I remember, it was a Georgia hoodie. I could be wrong about the state, but had a team on it, and real Southern accent. And he's like, "I'm taking the computer. I'm taking the computer," and he's reaching over, grabbing her laptop and trying to shove it down his pants. And I have it all. I had it on video. I'm not sure if the FBI erased that one. I have to look for it. If I still have it, I'll send it to you. But I don't know who that guy was. All I know is I said I wouldn't do that if I were you. And then I said I'm out because I didn't want no part of that. So I just
Yeah.
walked right back out of the office, and I saw people running toward this guy. Right, this guy had just apparently, I'm not sure what he did, but he just came out of a door, just put people through a door, like a random door in the hallway. I don't know where it went, but he didn't go in it, or he came out of it. I'm not sure what happened in that situation, but it was a dude in a black trench coat, and he was very small in stature, and there were people crowding around him, and I felt worried for the guy because I thought they were going to jump him or beat him, like I'd seen people doing outside with the cops. And so I went to them. I made my way through that crowd. Was like, whoa, 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 kind of settle them down because they were yelling at him. And I asked him calmly. I said, "What's your name?" And I forget what he said. His name was. I said, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm Nancy Pelosi security or whatever." I was like, "Oh." I said, "Well, can you help me get out of here?" He said, "Yeah, follow me." And then so I tried to follow him through this melee, and I lost him somewhere. I went somewhere and I looked the other way and walked in the direction for a second and turned around. He was gone. So I was like, well, there goes that opportunity. But I don't know where he went. He might have took a side door. He knew places to go. I didn't. So he might have just took a route I couldn't go. But I ended up making my way back toward, and I could be out of time right now. As far it's been 4 years. So, but I know at one point I was in the crypt or statuary hall, the crypt, actually the crypt. I went through both, but in the crypt, I guess people have probably seen this video. It was one of the more popular ones originally, where you just saw a scuffle break out in the crypt, a major fight, like just between the cops and protesters. Now I was probably 15 people back or somewhere in the crowd, and I ended up getting pushed into it, or not into the police, but into the back of other people. And by the time I made it to the place where that was happening, the cops had been pushed off to the side, and they were in between some statues that were around on the walls, and they were hiding, like basically cowering against the wall from getting assaulted and harassed by protesters or whoever they were. So I saw that and I felt bad for them because they weren't doing anything really but trying to do their jobs. So I felt bad. I went over there and turned around and got between the people that were assaulting them and whatever, put my arms out, but like this, and just shouted no at them because they were acting like they were rabid. They just wanted to fight and just tear stuff up and destruct. It wasn't Trump supporters. I mean, they were dressed in Trump gear, but I'm pretty sure they weren't there for the right reasons at all. So I put my
Right.
arms out and I screamed at them, "No, stop! Stop hitting them like that." And at that point, a couple other people joined arms with me, and we all turned around and protected the cops. There were 3 of them or 4 of them behind us. And I turned around and apologized to them. I said, "I'm sorry for what's going on here. I'll help you if I can, whatever. So we just stood there for a minute while the violent people walked away. During that moment, there's a guy, probably 18, 19, 20 years old, young kid, had a stick, maybe like a broomstick or something, or a bow. He's over there bashing this marble topographical map of DC. It's like a DC model made out of marble. Now he does zero damage to this, but I didn't want him to break it. So I ran over there to him and I grabbed a stick and him. I said, "Stop!" And he's still holding on to it, and I got hold of it and I made him stop. I said, "Stop breaking stuff, man." I said, "This is our house. This is historical stuff." He got mad at me. He jerked the stick away and he turned around and huffed off and walked away. So I followed him so he wouldn't break anything else. I was going to stop him. If he started breaking something else, I was going to fight him, take a stick away, whatever. But we walked through a couple sets of doors. He turns around and starts bashing something right above the door seal. I couldn't see it because it's like right above me, for instance, if you see how that drop down is. He's bashing something on the other side of that to me. I can't see it, don't know what he's doing. And then all of a sudden it falls down. And it's Nancy Pelosi's wooden plaque. I was like, "Oh, okay, that's not historical, not important."
Yeah, no harm, no foul.
I was like, "Oh, you're cool, dude. That's whatever." But he kicked.
We like this guy.
But he kicked it at my feet, and I didn't want to kick it because I was like, "That's probably another charge if I destructed anything." So I was like, "No." I avoided it, and a couple other people jumped in there, so kicking it, stomping it. Then this kid, the same guy, picks it up and bashes it against the Nancy Pelosi sign, right? The Speaker of the House sign. It breaks both of them. It broke into two pieces and the other sign broke. I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was like, I can't. I was like, "This is insane." It was getting wild. So then that's when the older couple picks up the broken sign and takes that photograph. And everybody's seen that picture of them holding that sign. I don't know who they are, but I was kind of like right behind the camera guy, whoever that was that took that picture. But I recall that from being there. And then at another point, I want to make my way out. So I go toward I forget the name of the doors, the famous doors that were breached from the inside, there's a name for them. Anyway, they're big wooden doors and they got a magnetic lock on them.
Yeah, magnetic lock.
And so I make my way to that area and there's no way I'm getting out. But the crowd is there before me. Or there's probably, 25 people standing at that door trying to, I guess, get the cops out of the way because there's 3 or 4 police officers standing at the door. So I noticed one of the cops at least was one of the same officers I helped protect in the crypt. I was like, well, maybe he'll listen to me since I was nice to him and protect him, back there. Maybe he'll let me out these doors and I can just go on my way. So I made my way to the front of the crowd and I begged him, "Please open this door." I said, "Please open this door." He's like, I can't. I said, "Man, let me out, man. Please let me out. Open this door." And I asked him about 4 or 5 times. And the people behind me, I don't trust these people. I'm thinking some of these people are, Antifa or, even worse, paid government employees, but
sure.
I don't trust them at all. I'm thinking that if they think I am their enemy or I am, trying to just leave or assist officers, they might attack me as well. And I'm outnumbered by a good many. So I start just lightly slapping the door, make it look like I'm attempting to get, beat the door down. I'm not just going to pop with my open hand. Then looking back, making sure they think I'm, one of them, because they were not good people. I could tell they were just there to cause problems. They were young. Some of them were, you could tell they were not there for the right reason. So as I'm about to walk away after the 3rd or 4th or 5th time that officer said, "I'm not opening this door," I was going to just walk off and find another way out. So before I could even move, somebody behind me screamed, "Push," as loud as they could. And then the entire crowd just shoved against me and I was crushed. At that point, I thought I was going to die because that door was not opening. And I couldn't breathe at all. I had just had, not long before this, bilateral pulmonary embolisms. So my lungs were not in the best of shape anyway. I could not breathe. I was I lose my breath pretty easily at that point. And so I'm dying at that point. I thought my life's flashing before my eyes. I'm getting crushed. Not only can I not breathe, I'm getting mushed against this door by a strong crowd of people behind me. Fortunately, it felt like a minute and a half, but only 10 seconds go by, the door opened up and I was able to catch my breath, but I didn't realize the massive crowd on the other side of that door. A huge crowd. So as soon as the door opened, I just grabbed it and rode it around as it opened up and held on for dear life because it was a stampede of people coming in and trying to go out, but they were throwing weapons in. As soon as the door opened, weapons started being thrown in. And so I'm just trying to just sit there and not get hit by stuff. And I might have been hanging on for 15, 20 seconds. gentleman came up and grabbed hold of my arm and jerked me back in the building. And I was like, here, back again. And I had to catch my breath. So I slid off to the side and I bent down about, just trying to catch my breath because I was crushed and couldn't breathe. And I looked back and shook my head at the melee because I was trying to get out. And I said, well, can't go that way. I mean, this is all on video. It's all in my discovery. So I saw stairs going down and up in front of me, all off to the side of that door. So I went the downstairs thinking that going down would take me to the ground level because where those doors were, there was a long set of steps down. You had to get to the ground. I'm thinking if I go down, there's doors down there somewhere I could go out. So I get down another level and there's a cop standing down there. And it's a black guy and it's a cop. He's got a big smile on his face. And I'm like, I said, what's funny? Because I thought he was laughing. He goes, man, this is great. That's what the cop said. He goes, this is great. I said, is it? He goes, yeah, man, I'm on y'all side. I love this. And he gave me a fist bump. I was like, all right. I fist bumped the guy. I was like, well, I said, can I get out down here? He goes, no, you can't go down there, but you got to go back up. I said, all right. So I went back up and went up the set of steps that was, there was 2 steps. I went up steps and walked up another set of steps because there wasn't a floor there. There's a landing. When I got to the top of that, I was met with 3 guns pointed at me like that. I was like, oh, I put my hands up and 3 cops were yelling at me like, get the F out of here, get out of here. I was like, okay, all right, settle down, calm down, fellas. I turned around with my hands up, just walked down slowly, got back down to the landing and just went back down the steps because there was nowhere else to go. So I noticed that I couldn't get out that door still. The crowd was still too big. So I walked back toward the rotunda. Got into the rotunda and I just walked around. Just at that point, sightseeing, just looking at things, taking video. And I walked up. There was a line of cops in yellow. At that point, blocking a doorway, a way to go. I went up and made a stupid video I was going to put on Snapchat and asked the question: should we take our building back? Like, should we take our building? Just narrate the video. The cops couldn't see me. I had my mask up. I had my phone up like this. They couldn't hear what I was saying. I was probably 10 feet or more away from them, and I wasn't screaming it at the cops. I was just talking to my phone. But in my discovery, of course, I was yelling at the cops and threatening them, stupid stuff. They never heard a word I said in the first place. But after that was all said and done, I looked back and noticed the open doors. They were kind of clear. There's just a few people walking in and out. I said, my chance. So I went out the doors. I made it. Fresh air. And I walked down the steps a long way. And I looked up and I saw all these black vehicles, trucks and stuff, with people standing on top of them. And I was like, I thought the militia had shown up or something and had driven their vehicles all the way up to the Capitol grounds. I didn't know there were police vehicles with people on them. It was just random people standing on these cop cars. But they had no identification. They were unmarked. So I just shook my head and turned around and walked back toward the building because I had to get to the other side to get back to where I lost my wife in the crowd. She was there in 1 minute and gone the next. So I wanted to get back around because I didn't know where she was. I had no way to call her. My cell phone was not working for a while, so I couldn't contact her. I made my way to the building. There's a little couple steps that go up to a little porch area right near a door. And there were 2 guys. One guy was dressed like anybody, regular person. Another guy was wearing like slacks, loafers, sweater vest, button-up shirt, had a clipboard in his hand. And I'm looking at him. I just saw them hand somebody something out of a gray plastic tote, and it looked like a bulletproof vest the guy took off with. So I walked up. I said, "What?" I said, "What's going on?" I was questioning why that guy. They just gave him this stuff because I saw them hand it out. I said, "Are y'all giving stuff away?" They're like, "Yeah." I said, "Really?" And I looked in his bin, and there's stuff in there. So several vests, a couple helmets, a utility belt, and I was like, I said, "Well, whose is this?" And it had a generic police patch, right? Generic. There was no one in the crowd, no cop in the crowd that had a generic police vest, right? It just said, all of them had, DC Metro, Capitol Police. They're all identifiable. Even all the helmets, not a single helmet I saw in that entire, I looked through hours of video. Every cop's helmet had a identification on it, like some sort of, whoever they worked for, was on their helmet or a badge, some sort of symbol, or they had masks that flipped down, visors. This particular Mitch helmet was just blank and black. So I was like, maybe some group of people just brought this crap here and dropped it. Now these other people are just passing it out. So I asked the guy with the clipboard, I said, "Well, what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm just keeping track of what we're giving away." I said, "All right, well, I'll take some," not realizing I was being set up for a theft charge. So they literally set me up. had to have set me up. So I went ahead, grabbed it. The guy helped me put it on. He strapped the vest on me, put the helmet on me. I was like, awesome. I got a generic. He goes, you better take this patch off. So he rips the patch off and hands it to me. I was like, well, thanks. Put the patch in my pocket, and I walked right around the building wearing that. And then a couple of guys stopped me. Older gentlemen. They're like, hey, where'd you get that? I was like, in there. I said, back around the building where there was guys giving it out. They're like, and this guy pulls the cell phone out and he says, snap. I was like, oh. That's in my discovery. So whoever that guy was a cop. I mean, he was obviously wanted my picture on purpose. That was one of the first things they got was that guy taking a picture of me. I was like, man. So I continued on and ended up back at the hotel with people I didn't know. Like I never met them before. We weren't planning on staying, but we couldn't get our car. I couldn't get my truck out. Where I parked it, I was stuck. We were going to stay there for the night no matter what, because where I parked was a parking garage that they closed because of what was going on. So I couldn't get to it. So we ended up at a hotel with some older couple from Ohio, I believe. I don't know who they were. I was in there with another guy from South Carolina I'd never met till that day. And another guy from Texas, same thing, never met him. And a girl from South Carolina that I'd only met that day. We were Facebook friends, so that's how we ended up knowing. That's how I ended up knowing she was there, and that's where she told me to go. She said, "Come here and stay in this room." I said, "Okay." Never met him, but stayed there, and that's about what happened that day for me.
So needless to say, you had no nefarious plans to overthrow the government. It was never in your intention.
Well, I mean, it crossed my mind, but I figured there's no chance in that happening. But no,
yeah,
I don't know.
Something tells me you didn't come very prepared to do something like that.
No, I had all my machine guns in my pockets. I didn't pull them out that day. They were just hidden.
Yeah.
No, I didn't carry any weapons with me, even though they said I did. My wife at the time, we had gone shopping the night before at Dick's Sporting Goods or Academy Sports, wherever we went, and she bought a mask for a paintball mask and a knife and a couple things of pepper spray, 2-pack. It comes in 2-packs or whatever. So she bought the knife, pepper spray, and she bought a vest as well to carry some things in, a little just tactical vest, nothing major. And me, because my sister, for instance, we were in my mother, my father, my sister, and myself were in a family Facebook group chat all through COVID because we didn't get to see each other much that year. We stayed away from each other, so we communicated through Facebook. And me, my sister's a huge liberal, and I picked on her all the time. I still pick on her because she
good for you.
She gets offended at the slightest, anything that's conservative. Yeah. If I say something, she's like,
she's a liberal. I actually had a friend come over and look at some books that I have, and the titles made his brain sizzle, and I'm pretty sure I saw smoke come out of his fucking ears.
Oh yeah. So I always pick on my sister. She's my little sister. I love her, but she's insane. So I posted in this group chat on purpose that I was going to go dressed as Antifa because my sister didn't believe Antifa was real. The entire summer of love, I kept telling her, "Look at these leftist idiots doing that stuff." She goes, "That's not real. That's blah blah blah."
Yeah, they're just an idea.
Yeah, they're just an idea.
A really fucking bad one.
So I told her, I said, "Well, watch me. I'll get away with everything if I dress like Antifa." And that's just picking on my sister, right? I wasn't planning on none of that, but I took a picture of the mask in a box and said, "I'm gonna wear this. I'm gonna wear this." I didn't wear any of that, but I just sent it in that group chat, and they ended up biting me in the ass later when my sister turned me into that. Well, not her personally, but her stepdaughter at the dinner table. The night after January 6th, my sister told the family, her husband and stepchildren, that I was at the Capitol. And her stepdaughter, I'm not sure how old she was at the time, maybe 17. Apparently, she got up, called the FBI's hotline, and then turned me in. And so the next day,
did she get the $1,000?
Maybe. I mean, I hope she got paid for it. But the next day, the FBI showed up at my sister's house, and my sister, being the wonderful liberal she is, she don't know her rights. And when the FBI asked for her, for any information, she's like, "Well, take my phone. Take my phone." She was scared and handed them her phone. So they go through those messages and see what I said. And they're like, he was one of them. He's trying to be Antifa, and that's what ended up like being a news story that I went up there to pretend I was pretending to be Antifa. That and after the fact, after it was all over, I messed with my sister saying, "Yeah, I beat up all the cops." Blah, blah, blah. This messed my sister. My sister's head was blowing up at the time. You can see it in the messages. She goes, "I can't believe you. You're a terrible person." So I was just doing that to be funny because I didn't know the extent of all the violence that did occur from the bad people that day. Because when I said all that, after I learned of actually what took place, because the tunnel hadn't happened. That happened after I left. I left at 2:30 or whatever in the afternoon.
Oh yeah, you missed a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, the good stuff didn't happen until later. So I didn't realize after I'm saying that all to my sister that was going to take place. So that I sees all that, they're like, they've used it against me. They're like, he's violent. He beat cops up, blah, blah, blah. And so they came after me thinking I was violent. I had assaulted cops. That's how they came at me. They didn't arrest me peacefully at all. They used that to arrest me they came with force, put it that way. They sent out, they had a SWAT team or tactical team at my mother's, had a tactical team at a buddy of mine's house, had a tac team at my house. And they had a Greenville County SWAT unit or whatever at my house, and Spartanburg County was at my house. So there were two counties and a FBI unit. Now, that evening, I was working from home, but I was working from my mother's home. I didn't want to work at my house where I lived because, my wife was up doing stuff all day long doing her little business at home. So I would go to my mother's and work because it was during COVID and I had a work from home job at the time doing insurance. So I was working. And left work from my mother's, and she watched me leave, and she called me as I left. She goes, SUV just followed you out of here. I was like, okay. So I look back, and I'm like, sure enough. So they followed me all the way home. I mean, they didn't make it obvious, but they were terrible at their jobs. I mean, I could see them. And I noticed the car was also telling them as well. I was like, I've seen that car already. I know that car has been following me for a while. This was February the 25th.
And so you're in a small town, so
yeah, not a big town. I mean, Greenville is. I'm not.
You're in Greenville, okay?
Well, I was. My mother lived in Spartanburg, and I traveled to Greenville to go home. So I'm going. I'm looking at this 6-lane highway I'm on. It's not an interstate, but a highway with businesses everywhere, and I'm watching them at red lights. I can see them, follow me. I'm like, okay, they're following me. So, and I was off the next day, so I went and grabbed me some drinks and pulled into a liquor store, and I saw them pull in too, and they parked. I was like, yep, definitely follow me, and they never got out. So I went in, got what I got, came out, and got in. I went the back way to see if they followed me that way to my house. Sure enough, they did. So, all right. So I pulled into a Dollar General. I was going to grab me a chaser or something mixed with, and I walked in, got what I needed to get, and I came out, and there they were sitting, just lights running, just looking at me. I was like, hey, whatever. They weren't saying anything. So I decided to leave my truck there because I lived like 75 yards away. I said, you know what? I'm going to leave my truck here. I'm going to walk, see what they do, see if they follow me in their cars. So I got what I needed out of the truck, and I'm armed. I picked my gun up, put it on, and walked home. And as I'm walking home, I look down the side street that's about a block from my house. There was 2 vehicles sitting there with lights off. I look up the street a little ways in front of my house. I see 2 cars at the cross street in front of my house sitting with lights off. I said, wow. I said, they're coming to get me, apparently. I said, they're going to, tonight's the night. So I called my wife at the time on my way. I was walking through, I took that side street, and I was going to take a shortcut to my house between these 2 houses that were it's hard to explain, but they were kind of beside us, but facing the other direction. So I walked between their houses, and I called my wife while I was through there, and I said, look out front and see how many other cars can you see down that road, because I didn't have a good view. She looked out and told me she saw a few cars. I said, okay. I said, that's obviously the police or FBI. They're here to get me. She goes, well, I don't know about that, but we got to go to one of my dad's homes because he owned a bunch of houses. We got to go there and paint. I said, okay. So I went in, and then we pretty much immediately turned around and got in her Jeep and drove over to one of his homes. But on the way there, those same cars were following me in the Jeep. I was driving the Jeep, so I said, I got to a highway, and I noticed them. They got stuck at a red light. They couldn't get through. I made it through it. So I'm like, yes, I'm going to put some distance between us. So I punched it. And it was to see how quick they tried to catch up to me. So I hit this hill, and as I got over this hill, I looked to my left. I said, "There's a storage unit that I happen to know the code to because one of my jobs, one of my part-time jobs, I had a storage unit in there. I know the code to get in this thing. I'm just gonna go through this gate and see if they try to come in behind me." So I went up there, punched the code in, and the gate opened. And as I'm pulling through the gate, I see them coming down the hill fast, and you see them slam on brakes in the middle of the highway, and I could tell they're ticked because they couldn't get in the gate. The gate shut behind me. They couldn't get in, so they floored it, and they took off and took a street that went around to the back of this storage unit or storage area, and they didn't know there wasn't a rear exit they thought I was going to go through it. I just did a U-turn and went right back out that same gate, and they lost me. So that ended up being a thing that took place in my first bond hearing where the judge got mad. I eluded the FBI, but they lost me. So I ended up making it over to where we were going, and we did some painting. And then while we were there, my wife at the time gets a phone call. She takes this phone call very seriously. She goes outside and is on the phone. And I asked her, so who was that? Because she acted all sketchy about it. And she said, oh, they're calling me about a job. And this was 10:30 at night. I was like, okay. So I got a phone call right after that from my buddy Matt. And I answered the phone. He goes, hey, man, did you come get your trailer? Like I have a utility trailer I parked in his backyard to get it out of my yard. I said, no, I didn't. He goes, well, somebody took it. So at that point, I'm saying, all right, well, they're definitely coming, because I went and got my trailer. And I looked at her. I said, we're leaving now. I said, I'm done. We'll get in the car. Let's go. So we left and we went back home. As I turned down my street, I looked and there were cop cars everywhere. And now not all of them were marked. Several were marked, but there were probably 20 vehicles just up and down the street. You could tell they were just doing U-turns, coming back, doing that. And several were parked around my truck. They were at my truck looking in it with flashlights. I said, obviously something has taken place. That was the warrant had just been signed. Apparently they got the green light to come after me. So I turned in my driveway, and where we parked was behind the house. We go to the driveway and it wrapped around to the back of the house. So we pulled in, and I went to the back of the house. I went inside, and I guess they just realized I had shown up. So they started to pile in my yard, and I sat in the house and just started taking shots. I said, I'm going to jail. Someone give me a couple shots and loosen up. So I'm also scared because I was frightened at that point. They were piling in, and I didn't want to go out. I knew they were coming in after me, but I was scared to death. So I just stood there and watched them in the window, and I left all the lights off. I know they could probably see me with some sort of technology, but I stood there and watched as probably 40 vehicles made their way into my yard. I had a driveway that had two entrances. And so they were coming in both sides. There were dogs. They set up a spotlight. And then here comes an MRAP, a multi-wheel tank-like vehicle across the ditch and ended up in my front yard. I was like, good grief. I'm like, so they started shouting on the intercom, come out with your hands up, blah, blah, blah. We got your place surrounded. And they, they did. So I waited a few more minutes, and the MRAP started up. I was like, well, they're going to come through the wall with that thing. So I went in and opened the door and just put my hands out. And they started screaming. Several of them at the same time are screaming. And at this point, I'm loose because I had a few shots watching that. I said, they're all screaming at the same time, different orders, right? One of them's telling me to do this, the other one's telling me to do that. I'm like, I told them, I said, why don't y'all shut up? And one of you speak at a time. They're like, so one of them started talking at a time. He's going to give me orders. And I said, and he was like, turn around, pull your shirt up, and all this other stuff. So I did what they said. And then like one of them says, get on your knees. I was like, I'm not getting on my knees. I told him that's not happening. I said, you come put the cuffs on me, I'm standing up. So they come over and did it. They didn't put me on the ground. I put my hands behind my back. They put cuffs on me. They were pretty peaceful, when they did all that, because I wasn't trying to fight or resist. And I started turning around, just letting them have it. I said, you guys come at me like this. I said, this is ridiculous. I let them just know how stupid that show of force was. Greenville County was laughing at me because I was going off on the FBI, like just going off on them. I said, you bunch of idiots. I was letting them have it, letting it fly. And then my wife comes out. I still didn't know at this time she was running her mouth and snitching the whole time. I didn't know she was talking to the FBI. That's that phone call she got earlier was the FBI. I didn't know that at the time. I still had, some feelings for her or care, concern for her. But when she opened the door, every one of them put their guns up and had her covered with lasers, like they had me. And I just shouted out, said, put your guns down as loud as I could, and they all put their guns down. I was like, really? So they listened and stopped aiming the guns at her. I was like, oh, okay. But they probably knew that she was snitching all the time. They just did that as a show
For
for
a
me.
show, yeah.
Yeah, because they didn't want me to know. And but she had them convinced I was violent and I was going to kill her or beat her or something like that. I no idea she had done that, But there's another story behind that I won't get into today as to why she tried to get me in more trouble than I should have been in. I found out some things about her that would land her in prison the rest of her life, but she wanted me to shut up. So it's basically she lied to the FBI about my danger or my danger to her, made them hate me because who knows what she told them. I mean, she lied about everything, but so they really did not treat me respectfully at all because they thought I would hurt her, whatever. Um, I wasn't made aware of this for a long time until I first saw my discovery. I didn't really know what was going on, so I kept calling my wife from jail. She'd answer, we talked, about nothing else, and I miss you, love you, blah blah blah. And turns out the whole time she had stolen. I had several $1,000s in my bank account when I was arrested. She stole all that. She used it to take my buddy Matt on vacations because as soon as I was gone out of the picture, they were together.
No, man.
So they were all going on vacations with my money. Instead of sending it to me in jail to help me get what I need, spending it on her. Another thing I just found out this year when I finally was able to move in my own place was she never paid the power bill that was in my name on her home for like 9 months. And during COVID, apparently they wouldn't turn the power off. They just let your bill rack up. And so it was during COVID. And when I tried to get power turned on here, I owed a lot of money to the power company. I said, why do I owe that much money? Oh, well, your address here didn't pay the bill for it. Great. I said, does it matter that I was in jail? Nope. So
I think it does. You might want to talk to a lawyer about that one.
I haven't really fought it. I was in a hurry to get my power turned on here. I didn't have much time. So I went ahead and just had it put in my girlfriend's name so I could get power. But,
right.
I could not afford to pay over $1,000 just to get the power turned on at first, or well over 1,000. And so I was like, well, another thing she did to take my money, also she was continuing to collect state checks, like the COVID checks, in my name.
Oh,
after I was gone. Oh yeah. So I had to pay all that back when I got out of jail. Well, I didn't know I owed that money. And as I'm at work one day and I get a letter from my HR. It says, this is from the state saying we're garnishing your wages starting this week. I was like, what? I said, for what? And I called and I asked why. They're like, well, we sent you all this money. You weren't eligible for it. I was like, I didn't get the money. I never got it. It went to my account. The wife took it and spent it on things she wanted and vacations with my friend. But, they didn't care. They took the money. I had to pay $4,000 some change back. So, yeah, she has cost me lots of money.
And so let's talk about that real quick. So you get your discovery and you find out that she's cooperating with the FBI against you, her husband at the time. And not only that, she was at January 6th as well.
She was.
So you find this out and you give her a call. I would imagine you're pretty upset finding this out. And what happens to you?
I was, but I wasn't like real surprised. Like I could, because she had been the way she treated me and done when I was in jail, and just I could tell something wasn't right. I was like, right. This ain't right. Something's wrong. So I wasn't like really shocked. It wasn't like a huge reveal, but it never said her name. It just said person 2, person 1. That, and I could tell by the information being shared that it was definitely her. I said, that's odd. But see, I took up for her when the FBI was interviewing me. I said she did nothing wrong. I was getting her out of trouble that she didn't do anything wrong. She didn't trespass. She didn't make it to the Capitol.
Being a good husband.
Yeah, I was trying to save her, and she just threw me under the bus. But so my initial arrest was February the 25th of 21, and I was released in late April to go on house arrest or ankle monitor. I was on the strictest form of house arrest you could be on. They call it HISP, High Intensity Supervision Program. And you're drug tested often. You're checked in on all the time. You can't leave your home for any reason other than a job or a granted permission trip to Walmart or something. So I did that for 10 months roughly. But during that time, I had my lawyer at the time was a paid or a government lawyer. He hated me. I mean, he couldn't stand anybody involved in January 6th. He made that clear. He did not like us, and he never really told me the importance of me not speaking to my wife at first, right? He kind of like briefly mentioned it. Oh, by the way, just don't talk to your wife. Barely any instruction on what to not do or what to do. He just vaguely said it out, just in passing. I said, oh, whatever, thinking they can't stop me from talking to my wife, right? So I ended up, I tried to avoid her and tried to follow those instructions for several months. And then sometime in July or August of that year, she contacted me and said, it's an emergency. I need your help. It's an emergency. And she sent me a picture of her face bloodied up. So that I was like, oh no, instinct kicked in. I got to help her. So I reached back out. I said, what's going on? What's wrong? And she told me that she was down in Charleston or somewhere with Matt, and he had just beat her, and they got in a fight, and she needed help. I said, okay, I'll help you. So I ended up getting her an Uber ride for where she was. I ordered her an Uber, sent her to a hotel, got her a room, and ended up getting her an Uber and a plane ticket to come home the next day. So I did all that for her because I was worried about her. And still at this point, I had yet to see my discovery. I didn't see my discovery till long after I was in Northern Neck. First time I ever saw it. But for several months, she kept asking me for money to pay bills and stuff. So I felt bad. So I was working. So I'd send her money to help her pay bills. I thought she was paying bills. Turns out she was going out, having a good time, buying concert tickets for other guys with the money I'm sending her. Idiot. I know. So I ended up, I met someone. So I started talking to this girl, and we started dating fairly seriously. And we dated for several months, and I get a text out of nowhere from the wife, and she said, I know you're dating somebody. I said, okay. I said, you're dating several people. I said, I don't care. Why does it concern you who I'm dating? She said, let me talk to your girlfriend. I said, absolutely not. And she goes, well, if you don't let me talk to your girlfriend, I'm calling the FBI and tell them that you're talking to me. I said, do what you got to do. And so she did. She immediately contacted the FBI and said that I was harassing her and said that she felt threatened, blah, 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 all this stuff. None of it was true. I never harassed her. She was harassing me. I have a lot of audio of her threatening me, but, that's something that's past the statute of limitations for sure. But she basically used that against me because I stopped sending her money. She got mad. She was jealous I was seeing somebody. She called the FBI and had me rearrested. So that's where I sat in jail almost another year because she's insane. And she had me locked back up. And so that's how evil of a person she is. She got jealous.
So they basically, you contacted your ex-wife who was cooperating with the FBI against you, and then they revoked your bond because they're accusing you now of harassing an FBI witness, which is your ex-wife cooperating against you, who was also at January 6th.
Exactly. She's my now ex-wife. She was still my wife at the time.
Still your wife.
Yeah, she was still my wife at the time. And I was in no way.
Who cannot actually be legally compelled to testify against you.
No, and she had made it clear that she wasn't. And the FBI knew that. My attorney knew she was not going to testify against me. Like, at least she told me and them that, and she would not be a good witness because very early on in our relationship, she got very intoxicated, but she was also on pills that, for psycho. I don't know what she took. She's psycho anyway, but she was taking a lot of antipsychotic medication that I didn't realize was as serious as it is, and drinking on it because she's an alcoholic on top of that. And she ended up attacking me one night out of nowhere. We were sitting there watching TV peacefully, and all of a sudden she's attacking me. I'm like, what did I do? So I pulled out my phone and started videotaping this mess, and it got her on camera just coming at me like a mad person. So I'm like, I chalked it up to her being drunk and on those pills, and I was like, I forgave her, but she called the police on me and tried to have them arrest me for beating her, and I never touched her. I just pushed her off me one time. I pushed her away from me one time, and then she calls the police. He's beating me. I'm like, so I just left. I said, I want nothing to do with this. I took off before the cops showed up, thinking they're going to immediately arrest me because I'm a man, and they'll take me straight to jail. So I left and I went to my mother's at that point, and I just laid down and took me a nap, and I got a call a few hours later from the police. They're like, we need to talk to you. I said, I'm sure you do. And at that point, it clicked in my mind. I said, well, wait a minute, I got this video of everything she did. So I said, before you guys arrest me, can I show you something in my phone that might change your mind? They said, sure, come show us what you got. So I went to the police station. 4 of them met me in the parking lot, surrounded me. I said, guys, I said, I want to show you what I have. I pulled my phone out, showed them, and they were like, oh. They said, well, this isn't what she said happened. I said,
Yeah.
well, they said, can you prove when this took place? I said, yeah, look at the timestamp right there. They're like, okay, well, we're going to go have a talk with her. I said, okay. And what are you going to do? Well, if she continues with the story she told us, she's going to jail. I said, don't arrest her. I said, she's just an idiot. So they let me go. And I got in the car and I immediately called her and said, hey, the police are on the way back. And you need to tell the truth. She goes, I'm telling the truth. You're going to jail. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, I'm not going to go to jail. They just let me go because I didn't do anything wrong. I said, if you don't tell the truth, they're taking you to jail. I'm warning you. I said, I'm giving you a heads up. Just tell the truth. Tell them you were drunk and you forgot or something. I don't care. Just tell them, never mind. And she said, nope, you're going to jail. Okay. So she went to jail. And she was charged with a felony for that. So I believe ever since that day, she had it in her back of her mind, she had to get me back somehow because she's a malignant narcissist and deviant. And she's very, just put it this way, she had to get me back. So for a couple years, I guess, plotted and planned to figure some way to get me back or get me in trouble. And she finally found it. And it was January 6th. And so she put me through the ringer with the FBI, making it sound like I'm a terrible, abusive, violent, dangerous man, which I was never any of the sort. So, but she would have not been a good, credible witness in trial because that would have been brought up. Oh, well, you lied to
Yeah,
the cops.
well, I mean, if they even let you bring it up, there is so much evidence that benefited the J6 defendants that they just blatantly blocked and wouldn't allow into their trials. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's to be foreseen. But let me ask you this: so your Northern Neck experience, where I got a chance to meet you, you were in Northern Neck for how long?
8, 9 months. I mean, somewhere around that time, from March to December. So however long it is.
What was that experience like for you at Northern Neck? What is your opinion about that facility?
I think it should be shut down, and every person there involved in how they treated us in prison.
Well, give me some what are some things you witnessed at Northern Neck that you would say are foul?
Not this didn't all take place against J6ers because we were mixed in with Gen Pop.
Sure.
And so I witnessed some guards grab a guy and slam him against the wall, bust his head open, do some things like that. Things that should never be done. Something happened against me. I worked in the kitchen after, I don't know, 6 weeks, 2 months there. I was given a job in the kitchen because I kept begging to go to work. I couldn't stand sitting in the pod all day. So they let me go to the kitchen, and they would lock us in a room for our breaks that had no water, no bathroom, no nothing. They just shove us in there with what we could carry on a tray to eat and a cup of drink. And we were stuck in there for however long the ladies decided to take a break. And sometimes while we're in there, we had to go to the restroom. There's nowhere to go. And you could not, go out or in the hallway to the restroom because the doors were locked. You were stuck in this room. On this particular day, I got sick to my stomach. I mean, I had to go to the restroom very badly. That also on that particular day, the door that's typically locked that leads out into the hallway that would allow me access to get out to a restroom happened to be open that day. So they didn't lock it. So I cracked the door open and I looked down at the control office or window, what have you. And Officer Ball, I think, was in there. I think Ball was his name, the older one. There were 2. There was a son and a father. The older one was in the office. I begged him, hit the button on the wall and talked to him. I said, can I please use the restroom? I've got to go now. I said, I can't hold this. I've got to go to the restroom now. He said, no, go back inside. I said, sir, this is an emergency. I have got to use the restroom right now. He goes, use it in your pants. I was like, nope. I said, once he said that, I opened the door and walked my butt right down to the restroom. He's screaming at me over the intercom, get back in that room, blah, 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 blah. I walked right to the restroom and shut the door and used the restroom. I wasn't going to do it on myself. That's would have took my dignity away. It would have just embarrassed me and made a mess. And I was like, not happening. And once I came out of the restroom, he was there just cussing me up and down, cussing me like a dog, telling me I disobeyed him, blah, 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 blah. I was like, man, I had to use the restroom. I said, you had no right to tell me I couldn't use the restroom. And he was said, yes, I did. You listen to me. He goes, I'm, he threatened to fire me from my job. I said, do what you got to do, man. I said, I had to use the restroom. I said, I'm sorry, but I wasn't going to sit in that room. So he hated me from that point forward and always disrespected me every time he saw me. But also in the kitchen, that was the most disgusting, terribly filthy food environment. It was infested with rats, mice, and cockroaches. You walk in every day. We had to put boots. We shared boots. They didn't give you your own pair of boots. You would share a pair of boots with the opposite crew because you were working 12 hours every other day. So every other day, some other sweaty man put on this pair of boots and wore them all day, and you had to do the same the next day. And typically, those boots would have roaches in them, rat droppings, mice droppings, every day. You had to go in there and knock the crap out of the boots, and then wear them. Then you went in, and the roaches were scattered. They turned the lights on, and just roaches just scattering up the walls everywhere. I was a dishwasher for a time, and on the dishwasher machine, there's a handle that you turn that would open the drain or close the drain. The handle was hollow, so it was like a hollow piece of aluminum or metal. And I go over and kick it, and a dozen roaches will fly out of it every day, everywhere. And they were in the dishwater. As you're cleaning the dishes, there were so many that just fell in the dishwater that was cleaning our trays. So there's just full of roach water. Nothing ever got actually clean. We all ate off that every day. The meat and some of the other food items in the freezer on the boxes said not for human consumption. And it said for further processing only. I'm like, what is this? I mean, it was meat, but I'm not sure what kind of meat it was or where it was supposed to go, but it wasn't supposed to go in our stomachs. I think it was meant for dog food or something like, cattle feed. I don't know what they put that meat in, but it wasn't meant to be eaten by us. But that's what they bought and purchased because it was the cheapest stuff they could possibly get.
Yeah.
And I was made cook for a very short while, like 2 days, because I couldn't stand it because they weren't going by the recipes. They were given, I guess, there's a large recipe book that they had to go by to feed us. The ladies were so ignorant in this kitchen that they saw, several ounces, like 3 ounces of oregano for our spaghetti or whatever, right? Or, 3 ounces of oregano is a large amount of oregano. These mentally deficient people were taking a 3 liquid ounce measuring cup and putting 3 liquid ounces of oregano in a measuring cup and dumping it for 500 people in a vat of meat and or whatever.
That explains a lot.
That's why the food was so terrible and bland. They didn't, and I told her, I said, ma'am, no, this is the first time I cooked. I said, that's not what it calls for. It's calling for 3 ounces. And there's 3 ounces. I'm like, no, ma'am, that's not even half an ounce. I said, that takes a lot more. I said, look, I went over and grabbed the bag. I said, weigh this. And I said, this is closer to 3 ounces. She goes, I ain't using all that. Y'all be all right. I said, wow. So I was like, I don't want to cook anymore. I said, I can't do this to the guys. I said, this is terrible.
So let me ask you this. Can you confirm or deny that this was the case? So they would once in a while make that bread or that cake that they called Jesus bread.
Yeah.
And you would see little pieces of the top cut off. And the rumor was that it's because they'd make it the day before and it was covered in mouse droppings. So they would cut the droppings off the bread.
Absolutely. That's 100% true. I witnessed one day, they poured out, they made sheets of them for everybody. So they poured out one of the sheets and it had several droppings on it. And they were like scraping that off and chunking it. And then as they passed it by, one of the kitchen ladies says, I wonder what part it pissed on, and just laughed. I was like, I was like, oh, wow. And you could see the trails where they would eat, as they went across this bread. And they served it. I mean, every time you got a piece of bread that had little striations in it, it was because a mouse ran across and ate it. And then we ate that. We would So I'm pretty sure we all have health problems we don't know yet.
We're walking, talking science and medical experiments.
I don't know if you remember, my face broke out like I was a teenager. Like, I don't know how or why, but while I was in jail at Northern Neck, I broke out like I was 13 going through puberty. I had acne like I have not had in my entire adult life. and I'm not sure what part of my environment was causing that. You know what?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a lot of the guys that were getting staph and MRSA, and just sitting there, they wouldn't do anything about it. It would just spread.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
It's terrible there.
It was very bad, and the just the rules they come up with after when we left the kitchen every day. Now this is against the law. They would strip search us down to I mean, butt naked. They'd take us in a room and make us get butt naked and turn around and bend and spread them every day to make sure we weren't stealing any food
Yeah.
from the kitchen. I was like, this is ridiculous. We did end up getting away with stealing a lot of stuff though. We would take the cooler and once you fill it with ice, anything under that ice you can't really see. So we would put whatever we wanted at the bottom of that cooler, fill it with ice, and take it back. And we'd eat well. We try to eat well. Try to steal
Yeah.
stuff every day. I mean, they wouldn't feed us enough.
No, the food, the calorie intake was absolutely terrible there.
If all you ate was that food, you would waste away, and you would end up with getting scurvy and rickets. You weren't getting you weren't getting fruit. They had zero fruit.
Zero.
And the reason she wouldn't serve us fruit, the lady said, "I made that decision." I was like, "Why?" So y'all can't make alcohol with it. I said, "Okay." I mean,
well, we know her fat ass wasn't eating it.
No, they had a much better menu every day because in the officers' lounge they had a good food, and every day we try our best to steal some of that because it was so good.
Yeah,
we were in there just. I mean, I hate to even say that, and it sounds like we're thieves, but we were starving.
Yeah,
and
no, it really was the case, man. People were very hungry there all the time.
Exactly. We weren't getting any calories. And so we were all hungry, everybody on edge because we were starving. So we wanted to fight all the time. Like it's just like a constant bickering because everyone's hungry. And if you didn't have the money or the means to get commissary and you survived strictly off that, I mean, you were trying to do anything you could to hustle to get something to eat because it was just a terrible, terrible place. People would save each other's bread, put bread in their pocket so you just have something to munch on.
Yeah.
It was just a very terrible place. And I hope that they get the justice they deserve, every one of them.
Well, we got that group, Northern Neck Patriots. They're still standing out in front of that jail on Friday night, still going to the board meetings and bringing up, raising the issues. Even though the J6ers have left, they're still giving that jail hell. So a lot of props to the Northern Neck Patriots in Virginia.
I really
good group of people.
I really want to drive up there and join them and attend a meeting.
That's going to be pretty soon on the agenda for sure. For me and the girl, we're going to go up there and visit those people.
Yeah, I would not mind giving them a piece of my mind as a free man because some of them don't deserve to wear a badge at all. They didn't.
Yeah, well, the thing is they're a private facility, so they're actually in no official capacity any type of law enforcement officer when they work there. They're just
people with a badge.
Yeah, they're a private entity, so they have no official
Well, I do know that they're given certain items from the government to give to federal inmates. They're given
the money, the taxpayer money to do it.
Either or, but I know for a fact they're giving shipments of socks, underwear, toothbrushes, soap, deodorant, all that.
Yeah, they're reselling it to the inmates there back on the commissary list.
And they made us buy it.
Yep.
Even though it was given to them for free, we had to buy it. Nothing was free there. And that's what sucks. If you don't have any money whatsoever, you just don't get anything. And
I mean, there's guys with their feet so rotten and smelly because they can't afford socks and they're just wearing shoes with no socks for weeks on end.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't afford sandals, so they're just in the shower barefoot. I mean, it's
just
the terrible.
Nastiest. It was horrible. The water was never hot or cold. It was just like it was never any. You never had a good shower. It was just it was a terrible place.
Sewer water would run up from the showers when it would rain. It would the sewer system would back up, and it would sewer water would just flood the units. It was terrible.
Yeah,
Northern Neck is absolutely terrible. If there was one thing in closing that you at Robert Norwood would want the American people to know about January 6th that you don't think that the public understands, what would that be? What would that one thing be to tell people?
Well, from my own eyewitness account, from my own experience, and then later on from other testimony or information given to me by people in the know, it was 100% a setup. We were lured in. Violence was coordinated. It was now there were some random people that joined in the violence. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't not everybody's innocent there that day, but as far as participating in some of the mayhem, but a lot of it was egged on, encouraged, and supported, and started by people that were paid and there on purpose to start that, make Trump look bad or Trump supporters look bad. They had already done everything they could to destroy Trump, and it just didn't work. They knew they stole the election, so basically they staged a giant cover up. They staged a giant event to cover up the crime they committed November 3rd, 2020, and that took all the attention off of the question of whether or not November 3rd had any nefarious actions going on. No one could stop talking about J6. So J6 was meant to distract America from what took place in November.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like, to your point, we the J6ers.com are not presenting the case of we are innocent, that all of us are innocent. A lot of us are. A lot of the J6ers are 100% innocent, but some of us are not. And I'm one of those people. I'm not innocent, but we're not domestic terrorists. Yeah. We're regular people. We're everyday American citizens from all demographics and walks of life across the country. That on one day, some of us may have gotten caught up in the moment. Some of us may have acted a little inappropriate, but none of us are domestic terrorists. And what we the J6ers.com is hoping to do is showcase people's real live stories so you can see them and judge for yourself, because it's extremely dangerous that a conglomerate of politicians and a political party with their constituents and their pundits in the news media can create a narrative so dangerous, such as someone is a domestic terrorist, and have law enforcement treat them that way. We've got to understand what happened and make sure that this doesn't happen again. Again, we are not saying that we're innocent. We're not saying that that the law enforcement should not have been involved in that day. But what we are saying is that we are not terrorists, and we are not the things that we were described to be. So, ladies and gentlemen, follow our social media, True Social, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube at We the J6ers, and start to see for yourselves the stories and the interviews that we're conducting, and make up your own opinion. But if you get to the point where you realize that, okay, sure, things got out of control that day, but this was not an insurrection, these are not terrorists, then I want you to ask yourself, what else are they lying to you about? And the answer is very clear: a lot of things. So, Robert, I'm going to leave it to you, give you the last words. Anything you'd like to say about what you're up to, what's important to you, anything you want people to know about January 6th? What say you?
Sure. You speak for yourself now when you say we're all guilty. I'm guilty of trespassing. Okay, I did go in the building at the time. I didn't think it was a crime. I thought we were allowed to protest in there because what I'd seen the previous year of the left doing.
Well, if you had prosthetic boobs and purple hair, it would have been legal for you to do all that.
They'd have left me alone. I'd still be in there. But I thought I was doing my civic duty to protest what I thought was a stolen election. So I was doing what I thought was right, and things happened in the Capitol I couldn't have predicted happening. So I was trying. It was just navigating that crazy environment. To me, I guess if you want to say I was guilty of something, to be trespassing, and then if you want to say I'm guilty of theft, okay, I took that vest and helmet, but the circumstances were kind of strange. Somebody trying to give it to me. I was like, okay, so I'm pretty sure I was set up for that. I think there were setups going all around. The guy that led me to Nancy's office, the people that were outside saying, use this as a weapon, all that put together now, after learning what I know, I can't believe we all fell for that. I can't believe I fell for that. I did. I fell for it. I said some very inappropriate things. I'm ashamed, or I shouldn't have said, to the police that I was mad at for, shooting that pepper spray and got me on the face or whatever. I was mad at the cops for a while, the ones outside. But other than that, right now, I am very fortunate, very blessed to have the job I have. I'm not getting rich by far, don't get me wrong, but I'm able to pay my bills. I was let out on January the 13th, 2023. And so I've had a little more time out than a lot of the other guys. I was put on an ankle monitor. And I served almost 3 total years, including the first time around, on house arrest. Back after the 1512 was overturned, I happened to end up on that briefing. Me and the 3 others, was Fisher, me and 2 other guys that were on that briefing. After that, after we won that case, I thought my trouble was over. The only felony I've got, is gone. I've already served well over the time that I would serve for any of these misdemeanors I've got left. So I'm telling my attorney, hey, let's ask for this to be dropped because it's time served. Everything's good now. And then a month and a half after that verdict, or after the Supreme Court came down, the federal government indicted me on another felony charge. And they did that, I believe, to cover their butt because they had held me in prison on the auspices that I had committed the 1512. And that was no longer the case. Now they have held me in prison for what? A misdemeanor trespass charge. So they charged me with a felony 132, I believe, interfering with a police officer because one of the officers at the door I was talking to stepped to the side when I got shoved into the door. I didn't make contact with the officer, but because he stepped to the side, I then, getting shoved into a door, I interfered with the police. So that was the felony charge they gave me. And they knew I didn't have the money to fight that one also. So they knew I would plead guilty to something. So I ended up pleading guilty to that, but my sentencing wasn't scheduled till February 20th of 2025. I never made it to that. So once we were all pardoned, the next day, Judge Nichols dismissed my case with prejudice. So I was never convicted because I wasn't sentenced. So I'm lucky in that sense. I don't have a conviction, but I've got a good woman now. I got a decent job that I love. Got my own place now. And so I'm doing okay. It's still a struggle because financially I took a hit, losing 4 years of my life, basically. And also the biggest part of this, the saddest part, is I missed all the time with my little girl, whose birthday was yesterday. She turned 12 years old.
Awesome.
And from the age of 7 till 11, I didn't get a lot of time with her. I missed a lot of time with my little baby, and I'll never get back.
Sure.
And it kind of put a strain on our relationship because we're not as close as we were. I used to, she used to come up and give me a hug and a kiss and be my baby. But now she's more timid and doesn't act that way toward me because I was gone from her life for such a long time. And I don't blame her. I'm not mad at my little girl. She's just being a child. But the government kept me away from her for no good reason at all. I was not a danger to my community or anybody. I could have been out with my little baby, but so that's what I regret the most is missing the time with my baby. And
well, it's the same district attorney in D.C., Matthew Graves, who fortunately resigned, is the one that sent all of the FBI at us and our family, and sent and threw the book at us every chance he got. And it's the same district attorney who gave a pro-Palestinian protester 48 hours community service for punching a female Capitol police officer in the face on camera. So, to say that there wasn't an extreme political bias aimed right at the J6ers and the Trump supporters, I would have to say to you that believes that it's not that it was fair. You're fucking retarded. And it's easy to see how dangerous this is when it's being pointed at you and not the people you disagree with politically. But what we're saying now with WeTheJ6ers.com is this is a bad scenario for everybody, and this shouldn't be allowed to happen. We should be allowed to disagree with each other politically and even act a little stupid from time to time without the full weight of the Justice Department being hurled at you because of who you support politically. And that's exactly what happened here. So we hope to keep showing this and highlighting this. And the end game with us isn't to create sorrow or pity for us. It's to make sure this doesn't happen to you, even if you don't agree with us politically. So, Robert, thanks for taking the time to do this. We're going to get this video up and people can see who Robert Norwood is and make their own decision versus CNN and MSNBC telling you that Robert Norwood and others like him are domestic terrorists. We rest confident that you're going to agree with us that no, the fuck we're not.
No, no, just concerned Americans, that want my government taken over by who knows who. And
Yeah.
we had 4 years of terrible policies that just took us all down. I mean, we all suffer from it. And,
Yeah.
unless you live in liberal la la land where higher prices are a good thing. Uh,
Yeah. Or or don't exist. You
yeah,
know. Oh, well, thanks, Robert. I appreciate you, man, for coming on. And, everyone that gets a chance, support us and follow our social media at We the J Sixers on all platforms. So thank you, Robert. Appreciate you, brother. And
thank you, man. Appreciate it.
no worries, brother. I'll be speaking with you soon, man. Keep your chin up and let's continue to put America first.
Well, dude, God bless you. Love you, brother.
God bless you, man. Well, that's Robert Norwood. I got to know this individual in jail and in prison, and I can definitely speak from my interactions with Robert. Robert is a proud American. Robert loves his country, and if that makes you a domestic terrorist, well, then I guess Robert and myself are guilty as charged. But we don't wish any ill will against our government. We don't wish any ill will against liberals or Democrats. We don't wish any ill will against American people or its soil. We only want prosperity, and we want America to be great all the time. And so thank you for taking the time to tune in and watch this video, wethej6ers.com. If you're a J6er or a family member out there and you would like to tell your story and have us put it out there, please get in contact with us at any of our social media pages. Send us a DM and we'll get right back to you. But God bless America. God bless this country, and never stop fighting for it. And unless you play for the NFL, don't ever take a knee to communism. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.